Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in soft snowfall and quiet expectations, but for Emma Carter, it felt heavier than any winter she had known. The house was decorated the way it always had been. Twinkling lights around the windows, a tall Christmas tree glowing warmly in the living room, and the scent of cinnamon and pine filling the air. Yet something was missing. Or rather, something was breaking. Emma sat at the dining table, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the papers in front of her. Divorce papers. Her signature already written at the bottom of each page, ink still fresh, as if the decision itself had been made only moments ago. In truth, it had taken months of sleepless nights, quiet tears, and unanswered questions to reach this point. Across the room, Daniel Carter stood by the window, watching snow fall gently onto the empty street. Once, that sight had brought them together, two young souls dreaming of a future filled with love, laughter, and children running through snow-covered yards. Tonight, it only reminded them of how far apart they had grown. Their marriage hadn't collapsed because of betrayal or cruelty. It had faded slowly, painfully, like a song losing its melody. Daniel had become consumed by his career, always chasing deadlines and promotions, promising that things would get better soon. Emma had waited, and waited, until loneliness became louder than hope. "I'll leave tonight," Emma said softly, breaking the silence. Daniel turned, surprise and regret flickering across his face. "On Christmas Eve." She nodded. "I think it's kinder this way." He wanted to argue, to beg her to stay, but something in her eyes told him the decision was already final. Or so he thought. Emma stood up, collecting her coat and scarf. She moved toward the hallway, then stopped. Her hand slipped into her pocket, and for a moment, she hesitated. Quietly, without saying a word, she placed a small white object on the table, near the divorce papers. Daniel didn't notice. Emma opened the door, letting the cold air rush in, and stepped out into the night. Snowflakes settled in her hair as she walked away from the life she once believed would last forever. The door closed softly behind her, but the silence that followed was deafening. Daniel remained still, staring at the place where she had stood moments ago. His chest felt tight, as if something important had slipped away, something he couldn't yet name. He sat down slowly at the table, his eyes falling on the divorce papers again. That's when he noticed the small object beside them, a pregnancy test. His breath caught. Hands shaking, he picked it up. 2 lines clear. Undeniable. The room spun as realization crashed over him. Emma was pregnant, their child, and she had left without telling him. They discharged her quietly. No apology, no investigation. Just paperwork and silence. Her savings disappeared. Her calls went unanswered. Her reputation followed her like a shadow. She tried civilian aviation. Rejected. Again. And again. Your record raises concerns. Her parents didn't ask questions, but the disappointment lived in their eyes. She moved into a 1-room apartment with flickering lights and thin walls. At night, she replayed everything. Every smile, every lie, every moment she ignored her instincts. The worst part wasn't losing her career. It was losing her voice. She stopped explaining herself, stopped defending. Silence became armor. Months turned into years. She worked night shifts, studied alone, trained her body until pain felt familiar, comforting. One night, staring at the ceiling, she whispered, "They took everything, but they didn't take me." And that was the first night she stopped crying. She didn't come back loudly. She came back prepared. A private defense contractor noticed her simulations, anonymous, flawless, ruthless. They didn't ask about her past. They asked one question: can you fly what others fear? She could. She trained in silence. No medals, no applause, only results. Her instructors didn't praise her. They respected her. She learned strategy, psychology, and patience. Revenge wasn't rage anymore. It was clarity. Years later, her call sign was assigned simple: Dark Ravien 7. The bird that watches, the number of rebirth. She became the pilot commanders trusted when failure wasn't an option. And when her name was classified, she smiled, because anonymity was power. The flight from Frankfurt to Washington was routine, until an unidentified threat triggered a full defense response. 2 F-22 Raptors scrambled. Passengers panicked. The captain's voice shook as the radio crackled. Escort acknowledged, identifying lead pilot. The response came calm, controlled. "This is Raven 7. The captain's breath caught. That name, he knew it. So did Colonel Harris, now a civilian consultant, seated 3 rows behind 7A. When the captain turned and looked at Ayla, recognition hit him like gravity. She stood slowly, calm, unshaken. Harris whispered, "No, that's not possible." She turned to him. And for the first time in years, she spoke. "You taught me something." "Colonel," she said softly. "Silence can be sharper than sound." The jets flanked the aircraft, wings steady, dominant, a message broadcast across the cabin. "This flight is under the protection of Raven 7. No applause, no shouting, just awe." Later, investigations reopened. Data surfaced. Truth rose. Evan Cole resigned. Harris vanished from public life. Ayla didn't testify. She didn't need to. Justice arrived without her lifting a finger. At the destination gate, a young girl stared at her. "Are you a pilot?" she asked. Ayla smiled. "I am." That night she watched the sky not with anger, but peace.